The 20th century. The Progressive Era in World War I. Populist successes in both local and national elections encourage others to seek change through political actions. Poor farmers' daily struggle to make a living made political activity difficult, so progressives came to dominate. Progressives achieved greater success in part because theirs was an urban middle-class movement. Started with more economic and political clout than the populists. Progressives could devote more time to the causes. Progressives were northern and middle class so that the progressive movement did not intensify regional and class differences. Roots of progressivism lay in the growing number of associations and organizations. National Woman Suffrage Association, the American Bar Association, and the National Municipal League are some of the many groups. Members were educated and middle class, further boost from a group of journalists dubbed muckrakers. Revealed widespread corruption in urban management, progressives achieved great success. Du Bois headed the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. After a lifelong struggle, Du Bois abandoned the United States and moved to Africa. Robert La Follette led the way for many progressive. Most prominent progressive, Theodore Roosevelt. Presidents Taft and Wilson continued to promote progressive ideals. Progressivism lasted until the end of World War I. War had torn apart the progressive coalition. Pacifist progressives opposed the war while others supported it. Red Scare heightened by the Russian Revolution further split the progressive coalition by dividing the leftists from the moderates. Achieved many of its goals, progressive movement was brought to an end, at least in part, by its own success. Foreign policy and U.S. entry into World War I.
Roosevelt was an even more devout imperialist than McKinley had been.
Strong-armed Cuba into accepting the Plata movement. Roosevelt's actions were equally interventionist throughout Central America. Country set its sights on building a canal through the Central American Isthmus. American foreign policy continued to adhere to the Monroe Doctrine.
Wilson won the election of 1912, a three-way race in which a third-party candidate, Theodore Roosevelt, outpolled Taft, the Republican incumbent.
When war broke out in Europe in August 1914, Wilson immediately declared the U.S. policy of neutrality. Owing to America's close relationship with England and relatively distant relationship with Germany and Austria-Hungary, a number of Wilson's advisors openly favored the Allies. England's superior navy allowed it to impose a blockade on shipments headed for Germany, namely American shipments. The British government confiscated American ships. They then paid for the cargo, reducing the pressure that American merchants would otherwise have put on the U.S. government to take action. Germany attempted to counter the blockade with submarines. When the Germans attacked civilian ships, it was usually because those ships were carrying military supplies. German submarines sank the passenger ship Lusitania in 1915. In 1916, while Wilson was campaigning for his re-election on the slogan, "He kept us out of war," Germany sank another passenger liner. Popular support for entry into the war was beginning to grow. 1917, the British intercepted a telegram from German Foreign Minister Zimmermann. The telegram convinced many Americans that Germany was trying to take over the world. World War I and its aftermath. Government's power expanded greatly. Government took control of the telephone, telegraph, and rail industries. Curtailed individuals' civil liberties. Still sizable opposition to U.S. involvement. Espionage Act in 1917 and the Sedition Act in 1918. Americans began to fear a communist takeover. Radical labor unions such as the International Workers of the World were branded enemies of the state. Unions lost powers. Eugene Debs, the socialist leader, was also imprisoned for criticizing the war. Federal Bureau of Investigation was created to prevent radicals from taking over. Palmer raids in early 1920, the government abandoned all pretext of respecting civil liberties as its agents raided union halls, pool halls, social clubs, and residences to arrest 4,000 suspected radicals. Committee on Public Information created the image of Germans as cold-blooded, baby-killing, power-hungry Huns. Americans rejected all things German. For example, they changed the name of sauerkraut to Liberty cabbage.